They all sat together to have a meal, and there Vin asked Reynold if he knew what the future of art would be. Reynold agreed and mentioned that he knew since art awakened when he was 3 years old. Tabby was shocked to learn that art awakened at the age of 3. Alice added that art also blew up most of their house in the process. Reynold reminisced about those being the good times. Just then, Eleanor tried to reassure Reynold by asking if he was fine. After calming down, Vin suggested enrolling Art at the Cyrus Academy. Reynold questioned if Vin was serious, noting that Art was only 8 years old and the Cyrus Academy was the most prestigious magic institution on the continent. Tabby expressed doubt, but Vin made a compelling point, highlighting the level of skill Art possessed. This made sponsoring Art seem worthwhile, relieving Reynold of concerns about the expenses. Alice disagreed, mentioning that they couldn't allow it as Vin's family had already done a lot for them. She felt it would be awkward, especially considering Art's young age, and she doubted the academy would even consider him. Vin replied that he had a long-standing business relationship with the game's director of the Osiris Academy herself, and he could talk to her about it. Art excused himself, stating that if it was about his future, he had something to say. After all the discussion, night fell, and they all departed from the dining area, leaving the servants to clean the table. Eleanor retired to her bed, while Art stayed behind to converse with his parents. Reynold expressed that no matter how much Art changed, he would always be his son. Art remarked that he had indeed changed a lot since they last saw him. Alice commented that she still couldn't believe he had returned to them, now grown into a handsome young man. Reynold mentioned that even after discovering Art was a deviant mage, capable of perhaps becoming one of the strongest mages in the future, it was still only the second best news of the day. Alice concurred, adding that he was probably too grown up now for his old mother to give him a goodnight kiss. Nevertheless, he gave her a cheek kiss before retiring to his bed. Reynold advised them to let him sleep. Art bid them both goodnight, expressing how much he missed them. As they were leaving, Alice suggested to Art that they should go shopping with Eleanor the next day. Art needed some new clothes, and it would be a great opportunity for him to bond with Eleanor. He agreed, and then Reynold took a moment to thank Vin for his earlier enthusiasm, acknowledging that he meant well. Art then reminded everyone of their earlier conversation, mentioning that he had just reunited with his family, so he wanted to spend some time with them before deciding whether to leave them again to attend the academy or not. Vin agreed, admitting that he might have been getting ahead of himself. As Art stood up, he noted that he seemed more tired from the sparring session than he thought and asked to be excused. He left the room, and Lilia followed him, suggesting that if he went that way, he would end up in their cellars. She proposed a better place, leading him to where the servants of the house were sitting. She informed them that she had a guest with her and hoped they wouldn't mind. Art apologized for any inconvenience he might have caused. An old lady among the servants remarked that Art was the lad who had burned half of the lawn she worked so hard to maintain. Another man assured Art not to mind her, saying the lady was only teasing him. As they both sat there, Art thought that Lilia seemed unusually quiet, but he assumed that was her usual demeanor. Lilia then asked if they had any leftover duck meat, particularly the fatty parts. The old lady served her and remarked that Helstia had been getting suspicious because Lilia had been gaining weight recently. Lilia retorted that she didn't want to hear such comments from her. Another waitress chimed in, telling Art that Lilia always sneaked there whenever she felt stressed. Art wondered what could be stressing her out. The man explained that Vin and Tabby's greatest wish was for their daughter to awaken as a mage, despite neither of them being mages themselves. Lilia also harbored the desire to become a mage, adding a lot of pressure on a young girl like her. Art tried to reassure everyone, telling Reynold not to worry and mentioning that Helstia's family were nice people who meant well. With that, Alice and Reynold bid them goodnight and left. The next morning, Art was awakened by Sylvie, and he remarked to her that she seemed excited. He then wondered how Teasia was doing. However, he noticed an odd smell emanating from Sylvie and joked that it seemed he wasn't the only one taking a shower that day. He proceeded to wash Sylvie, and afterward she rested. Just as Art settled in, there was a knock on the door, and upon opening it, he found Eleanor standing there. She greeted him and mentioned that their mother had asked her to wake him up. Art agreed, suggesting they head down to see their mother. Eleanor replied that they would eat breakfast first and then go shopping, prompting them to hurry along. After a brisk run, they reached the market, and Art remarked that it was Xyrus City. His attention was caught by a shop filled with luxurious items, prompting him to wonder what it was. Tabi explained that those small orbs were known as beast cores, magical cores extracted from mana beasts to harness their power. She noted that the effects varied greatly between the cores. A boy could gamble to spend hundreds of gold, but if they were lucky, one might even contain the will of a beast. Art was shocked to hear the mention of hundreds of gold. Tabi clarified that it could be thousands as well. Art thought he was good with his best will. Tabi mentioned that their Helstia auction house had received a bid for those cores and even infant mana beasts, inviting him to take a closer look when he had the chance. He expressed appreciation and thanked her for the offer. Lilia then took him to a place she had in mind as soon as she saw him. They arrived at a barber shop, where Art sat down, staring apprehensively at himself in the mirror, while the barber stood with the scissors as Art seemed scared and asked if it was necessary. Alice replied that Art's hair was atrocious. The barber assured him not to worry, promising to make Art shine like the flawless gem he was. As the cutting began, Art commented that he felt ridiculous. Alice remarked that now he looked perfect, and Eleanor added that he looked good enough to be her brother. They stepped outside, and Alice remarked that Eleanor was correct. Now Art looked like a civilized man. As Art and Lilia wandered, they encountered some differently dressed people. Lilia explained that they were students of the Xyrus Academy. Art admitted he didn't really know much about it. Lilia added that it was a status symbol to be able to wear the uniform, but Art commented that they looked like heels to him. She mentioned that many of them were almost considered royalty around there though. Alice, Tabi and Eleanor joined them, and Alice asked what they were talking about. Lilia replied that they were discussing the school. Then she noticed Art, behaving like a kid, rolling around, and commented that he was like a puppy. Alice noted that Art was usually so calm and mature, finding it refreshing to see him so excited like that. Tabi added that it was a bit comforting for her to see him acting more like a kid, especially after the spectacle of the previous night. Art entered a weapon shop and was immediately captivated by the array of weapons and armor on display. Excitedly taking it all in, a man approached and asked if he needed help, noting that the shop wasn't meant for kids and suggesting he leave politely. Another man pointed out that the shining sword Art was admiring was a dangerous weapon, questioning if he understood its significance, unlike the toy sword he might have at home. Outside, there was a candy stone. As Art turned to leave, he apologized for unintentionally causing any trouble. The man asked him to wait, commenting on his rudeness, then placed his hand on Art's shoulder to stop him. Art requested that he remove his hand. The man seemed indignant, but then noticed Tabi and the others approaching. Tabi, recognizing the situation, confronted the man, informing him that Art was from the branch family of House Ravenpaw. She asked if he would like her to revoke him and his family's participation in the Helstia auction house. Startled, the man, named Augustus, immediately apologized, expressing his ignorance of Art's identity. After they left the shop, Art thanked Tabi for helping him out of the situation. She replied that she was more concerned about the man's reaction than Art's actions. Alice chuckled at that as well. Later that evening, they all returned home. Vin mentioned that they had finally arrived and asked Art to come over, mentioning that there was someone he would like Art to meet. A lady then spoke up, stating that Art must be the one they had been talking about, and Vin proceeded to introduce her as Cynthia, the founder and director of the Xyrus Academy. The Xyrus Academy was hailed as the most exalted sanctuary for any would-be mage privileged enough to possess both the background and talent to enter. It served as a breeding ground for acclaimed scholars, guild members, leaders, royal guards, and military powerhouses. The fame and prestige associated with the academy were unmatched compared to the countless other academies scattered across the continent. At the helm of it all was the academy's very own director, Goodsky. Art and Cynthia only stared at each other. She extended her hand towards him, stating that it was nice to finally meet him. Art pondered the proper social convention in such a situation, wondering whether he should kiss her hand or shake it. Opting for a handshake, he replied that it was nice to meet her as well. Just then, Alice knelt beside him and apologized for Art's rude behavior, explaining that he had returned home shortly and was unfamiliar with the formal customs of the academy. Art hoped that their meeting wouldn't take long, as he hadn't eaten in hours. Cynthia replied that it was quite all right, and she was the one intruding at such a late hour, but she couldn't refuse a favor from Vin, especially considering his great contributions to the Osiris Academy. Art responded that he was only helping out the academy because he hoped for Lilia to attend one day. Cynthia remarked that it wasn't often she took a house trip to visit a potential student, but Vin piqued her interest when he insisted that a prodigy of the highest caliber was currently living in his home. Then, Cynthia asked Tabi to let them into the open space so that she could see a demonstration. Tabi agreed, but Art urged Alice to at least let him eat dinner first. Tabi asked Cynthia to follow them. Vin mentioned that they had a wonderful paved country yard that would be suitable for the demonstration. Both Art and Sylvie were hungry, and Art remarked that it seemed like they wouldn't be eating dinner soon. When Cynthia saw Sylvie, she commented on how cute she was and asked if she was Reynolds' contracted beast. Art corrected her, explaining that Sylvie was his body and had hatched only a few months ago. Cynthia found it interesting mentioning that many there purchased mana beasts to form contracts, but she had never seen any like Sylvie. Art explained that Sylvie's mother was some sort of scaled wolf with small wings, and she was almost dead, protecting her egg when Art stumbled into her nest. He considered himself lucky to have found her. Hi guys, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe if you enjoy the content.